Africa is the continent with the youngest population in the world, with more than 400 million individuals on the continent being aged between 15 and 30 years. And as we celebrate the World Youth Skills Day, I'm going to have a conversation with the UN Resident Coordinator, Mr. Ozonnia Ojielo, on what should be done to equip youth with the skills they need to actively participate in finding solutions to problems the world is facing right now. Ozonnia, thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
With considering current socio-economic and environmental challenges, what skills would you advise youth be equipped with?
Thank you. The problem actually is that all the evidence begins to point to the fact that the skills and knowledge that people have today may not even be relevant in 20 years' time. So we cannot approach it with some degree of prescription by saying these are the skills youth should be equipped with. It should actually be a more iterative process of trying to envision the future. What would the future look like 20 years from now, whether in Rwanda or the rest of the continent? A future where you have generative AI, where social media has become a platform for negotiations between governing authorities and the public, where it was a platform for social mobilization, and where it's become a platform for rumors and misinformation and disinformation. And therefore, you can actually create societal upheaval by the nature of what you post on social media. So there are certain attributes, first, that recommend themselves, attributes of critical thinking skills, attributes of social engagement, ability to interact with people, emotional intelligence. All of these can make us active members of society as we engage and relate with the others. But then when it comes to skills, if we have the critical thinking skills we need, then we begin to give people a form of education that is not designed to give them jobs, but designed to make them competitive. So you might learn a liberal arts education or education focused on science. That doesn't mean you'll be a scientist, but that affords you the ability to engage, to decipher what might be useful for you, and then to leapfrog into the kinds of opportunities that you find yourselves. You take, for example, today, the creative industry has become a major industry in Africa. Nigeria, South Africa have become the leaders in the industry. Well, what is the currency for employment in the creative industry? Your talent. It's not just the university education. It's just your talent. Your basic talent is the minimum form of entry into the creative industry. And then, of course, you can improve. You can become a better actor, you can become a better producer, a better scriptwriter, and things like that. So let's approach it with what is the form of education that makes today's young people able to think critically, able to engage, to build social capital with others, to demonstrate emotional intelligence, to identify opportunities. So that degree of creative aggression, where you see opportunities and you can move in quickly. And then you can, add it up with any skills that education that you need. I know that technical and vocational education skills are very useful, but I think approaching it broadly, it's a different degree of envisioning of what the future will look like, and doing it together with young people so we can empower them to be ready for that future, because it's right around the corner.
Thank you so much. Now, what you just said makes me to think, is the traditional education system still fit for that purpose?
The traditional education system is evolving. I think that's the best way I would put it. That what we do today is evolving. It's good to learn those skills. It's good to learn the knowledge, but we can no longer stop there. In our time, our parents basically decided what they wanted us to be. They look at you, they say you talk a lot, therefore you should be a lawyer. They look at you, you like building blocks, Lego type blocks and things like that. Oh, he might make a good engineer, a good scientist. Those occupations will not go away. People sometimes claim that with AI, a lot of the traditional jobs will go away. The jobs that are routine, that are repetitive, might see significant encroachment by AI, because once it's predictive, right? Are you able to do the same thing over and over? There's no creativity required. Those might see significant encroachment. But jobs that require critical thinking, that require decision making, that require discretion will not go away. So even the so-called traditional jobs, what AI would do is that it will give you the information and the analysis in quick time. The kinds of lab results you might wait days for. The kinds of analysis you might wait for a couple of days before you get it. You get it in a matter of minutes, if not in a matter of seconds, and then you can make your decisions. So they will be useful. People will still fall sick. Bridges will still collapse. We need to build new roads and bridges, so they will be there. Lawyers might find that they can prepare briefs much faster because AI will help with the research and sometimes even with the analysis. The key is not to be afraid of the future. The key is that young people should be encouraged to embrace that future. They are able, to range and try things and test things that us, as parents and old adults, might be a little reluctant to do. So let them study for those traditional disciplines, but let's give them a curriculum that's not traditional. That's the point. The curriculum can no longer afford to be traditional. It has to be a curriculum that's open, that's iterative, that encourages critical thinking, but challenges them to embrace the future and to be prepared for that future, because that will be a future where the old knowledge might be partially relevant. It's the new knowledge that will count to make you more relevant in your society.
As you rightly mentioned, now in a group of experts discussing, the smart guy might not be the one who has solutions, but who asks great questions. Because by designing great prompts to AI, they'll be able to generate answers. Now, it takes me to the emotional intelligence. How is it going to be key in this digital era where AI is arising, so that the youth, we have that emotional intelligence important to be able to engage with the artificial intelligence and get the solution that are fit to respond to the human problems we're facing?
We always say that human beings are social animals, and that we like social interaction, we engage. That proposition is actually being challenged by what you see in the world today. Take a look at your own family or the average family. Anyone who has young kids or teenagers as children, how often do they gather together as a family? It's becoming quite rare.
Yes.
What you find is that each child has lots of gadgets, electronic gadgets, in their rooms, on their iPad and their phones and their computers, or playing computer games. And very often you need to seize those gadgets for them to even come to the family sitting room, family lunch to engage. And some of my friends actually say to me that they shut off the internet and they claim that there's been an internet outage. That's what gets their kids out to come and engage. So if we, who are supposed to be social animals, don't even engage, the skills and the knowledge often we learn from our parents, we learn from others, older relatives, which then would translate in our own engagement with our peers. That interaction is becoming very limited. So when we engage with our peers and then with others, our behaviors might be skewed. Our behaviors might not follow the assumed understanding of how people should behave in society. So that even makes emotional intelligence so much more important. It's the ability to recognize, first, aware of your environment, aware of the sensitivities in your environment, aware of the feelings, but also the needs of others, and therefore your language, your courage is reflective of that awareness in ways that promote empathy, understanding, and inclusion. And that's often not learned, not taught. It's learned, it's experiential from the family, from relatives and the others, which is why, like our cultures as Africans, your parents didn't teach you that you wake up, you go and say good morning to everybody who passes, or you show respect. But that's the way our society has been organized. We imbibe it as we grow up. We see others do it, and then we translate it ourselves in terms of our own behaviors. We'll pass it on to our children. So a scenario where young people don't even interact in their immediate family, how much more in the society? It means that emotional intelligence will be a very critical skill, a very critical attribute that today's youth needs to understand and ascribe as they range out to deal with others. And in a multicultural world where in the past, if you sat in your home city, you might see only people who look like you, who speak your language, who come from the same ethnic or racial group. Today is very different. The cities are mixed. You're getting people from all over the world. So that ability to interact will determine whether you are able to market yourself for others to see the value you bring, your knowledge and skills for you, and then you're able to work in a multicultural, office space. Those are things many employers will be looking for. And if you don't demonstrate them, you may be the best qualified in your class, but you will not be adaptable in that work environment. And so they may choose someone who has less qualifications, less degree, but much more adaptable in the workplace. That's why it's become so important for young people, but also for all of us.
And that's what so far the machines don't have.
Exactly.
I said so far.
Yes, and we hope they never get there, which is why the UN Secretary General is actually pushing for clear international understanding on the regulation of AI. There's got to be a limit to what they do, because the potential for harm is also high, not just in terms of autonomous weapon systems, but the moment they begin to replace human beings in the thinking and the actions of human beings, where will you stop? It's difficult to have where you stop. So we hope they never get that, and that machines are tools for us as the Homo sapiens, the human species, to use them to advance our work, to add value in our own lives and in our own society.
People plan development priorities. What should be the priorities for youth, especially in enhancing their capacity, their skills? What should be their priorities? What should development actors be concerned in doing or preparing for youth to excel?
Fundamentally, the starting point is education, both formal and non-formal, because we have young people who, by virtue of their social status in life, either didn't go to school or stopped somewhere, and therefore, because what they have is limited education, the opportunities for them are limited. So we have to begin with education, formal and non-formal education. So you see, it's lifelong learning, yeah? From childhood to up to the work, early life to work, that makes you competitive in society. And it doesn't matter traditional, non-formal, new forms of education, which of course includes skilling. That's the preparation. I would argue that that's what we owe them. Because when you do that, what you then, the result is that you create a sense of hope. They feel empowered that they have the right knowledge, the right skills. Then they are hopeful of the future. They know they can be competitive like anybody else. It's not about giving them money. It's about the education. That's number one. Number two is that every day on social media, if different WhatsApp groups you belong to, even sometimes on the internet, you see lots of young people with brilliant ideas. Somebody has use some unconventional materials, produce something that generates electricity, or that with a car or something that flies. Yes, it's crude, but you can see that's a scientist at work there. We don't have financing to incubate their ideas, to help them to test their ideas, to help them to perfect it, to go to an institution with equipment, with the right equipment, where they can stay there, use the best possible equipment and materials to reconstruct those their ideas. And when they do so, with the financing to continue to test, and when we think that it's something that could be showcased, then you have a platform, investors, government institutions, private sector actors linked to research institutions that can invest and take that idea to scale. So people have ideas, but they have no connection for where they get mentoring and technical support to take their ideas to testing. And usually that's a research center, or a production center, or a university. Something like that. We don't have that connection. Universities are there doing their fantastic academic research. Young people are in society with their brilliant ideas, no connection. And because some didn't even go to secondary school or didn't finish high school, they think they have no connection with the university. There will be no role. So I use the phrase bringing the town and the gown together. The gown is the university, the town is the society. We need to bring town and gown together in this common enterprise to leverage the ideas that young people have, because it's also connected to that sense of hope. So the testing and then overall financing, which doesn't have to come from the state, but there's got to be an R&D financing that gives you money to test your idea, prototype it, and then see whether it works. And if it fails, that's okay, because that's part of the learning of society. But then financing to move it to scale, where you can then mass produce and sell to society. So we have bits and pieces in different places. There may be a state fund for innovation. Young people don't know about the state fund. The money in the state fund is small. And many institutions, including many UN agencies, often would do hackathons or competitions on ideas. So you may have 100, 200, 300, 400 young people competing with their ideas. At the end of the day, we'll give awards to 5 whose ideas seem the best, which is wonderful. What is missing is what do we do with the rest? Who have good ideas but didn't have the technical support to finesse their ideas in a way that they become competitive. It doesn't mean the ideas are wrong or have no value, just that they need additional support to get the ideas to a point where those ideas become competitive and people might be interested. So we've promoted and honored 5 and given them money, but there's another 400 who've fallen behind who get nothing, who may benefit from some of the coaching to present their ideas, but then there's no place they go to for help to take those ideas forward. And very often these are not even state institutions. Very often these are private sector R&D centers that mop up these young people, help them with their ideas, because there's money to be made when those ideas are finalized in ways that are marketable. So all of that is missing. Across Africa, what you find is that many of our private sector are just more interested in patient capital. You go, you build your houses, you leave the houses, whether they are rented or not. That's my house. It's an 8-story or 7-story apartment block. Tenants will come and give me money. And the idea to range beyond that, to test unconventional ideas, some interventions that are a little risky, like investing in these young people, but huge reward. Many of our private sector are not there yet. And we need some angel investors who will say, I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm also a private sector person, so I want to make some profit, but I want to make profit in ways that empower people in society with good ideas, and they may have encouragement from the state, to then range. So the state may have a finance institution that provides some kind of guarantee for half of the money. Because 20 ideas may fail, but one right idea, the receivables, revenue or income from that one right idea might overwhelm all the money spent on the 19 that failed. That degree of thinking has not permeated development agencies, neither has it permeated many government institutions. What you see are still early stage interest, and we need to build on that.
Yeah, you're right, because in the brainstorming, actually, some scholars believe that when you start convergently and have the right ideas, you may actually miss out some good ideas that could have been gotten when you start with those all ideas, including bad ideas.
Yeah.
Now,
and there's actually no bad idea. It's just that the idea is not ripe. There's no idea that is bad. It may not be ripe for that moment, but certainly not that it is bad. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we say we shouldn't leave anyone behind while striving to achieve the SDGs. But when we say leaving one behind, it's in terms of elevating more people from poverty. It is in terms of reaching out to people. But leaving no one behind also should be in terms of having everyone participate, actively contribute. How does the UN envision the role of youth in accelerating the achievement of the SDGs?
The good news is actually that Rwanda has created a governance system, learning from the experience of the genocide against the Tutsi, a governance system that continues to strive to be inclusive. And noting that all over the world, there's no system that is perfect. So every system is work in progress. But Rwanda at least showcases efforts that allows for engagement at different levels, even for the district level when they're developing their plans. You must demonstrate you've consulted everyone that counts. In terms of representation, in the parliament there are seats reserved for different categories of those that normally deals with disabilities or even young people that in many societies that alone is a disqualifying factor. You're youth or the fact that you have a disability from participating. And then for us as a United Nations system, part of our value add is that we support our governments to look deeper in the analytics to identify who are those potentially left behind and how they might be included. In Nigeria, we have a saying, don't shave someone's head in their absence. Yeah, so we can't claim that we're speaking for young people or that we know what is right for young people. As UN, we have comparative experience of what we've done with young people in many contexts, even in Rwanda, that we can put on the table. But actually, I would prefer that, as we're asking ourselves this question, also asking young people, what would they need to give them the assurance that they are actively participating, they're not being left behind? Because left behind, there are many ways. If you do not have the financing to be present in the public space when discourses are taking place, then your priority is to go and find food for the day. So if you're being called to a meeting in the village square, at the cell or sector level, you might not show up. So I think it starts with economic empowerment. Because if people are economic empowered, the most basic needs are taken care of. If your most basic needs are not taken care of, that's your priority. And if someone is saying to you there's a meeting to discuss road construction in the community or to have a role in the city assembly, that's probably not your priority. So anything we can do to strengthen the opportunities for economic advancement for young people creates self-confidence, creates a sense of hope in the future, assures them that their most basic needs for themselves and their families or loved ones are taken care of, and then they are able to participate in all the other spheres. So that's number one. Number two, of course, is that in the governance system, because there are opportunities for young people in Rwanda, they are represented. What we now hope to see is that it's not the same young people over and over representing everyone else. That there's a mechanism that allows other young voices to be heard, for them to participate in those spaces. It's very convenient for us in the development partner community to work with certain degrees of community groups and NGOs, the ones we know, or the ones who are very articulate. So they come to UN meetings, they might speak the UN language, they speak the development language, they speak the language of SDGs, so they're very convenient. It's convenient for us to say, yeah, these are our partners, to invite them to all of our meetings. And yet there are others who don't understand UN language, but who are just as important critical stakeholders. So it's about finding that balance. So if you go to a district one time in terms of a consultation, but make sure you go to another district. If you invite representatives of a different youth group one time, then invite others from a different sector. So that way we have to consciously go out of our way to make sure that we're supporting the young people to have their voices heard. So ultimately, to ensure that young people are not left behind, it's all about decision making. So don't make a decision without them. They have to be part of that decision making. And don't make it a tokenist approach, because tokenism is to say, well, we're going to have a meeting on an X day and everybody should come so your voices are heard. And then you come on that day, you present the ideas, you present the suggestions, you say, which one do you support? And, so it's a 2-hour meeting. We support that one, case closed, write nice paper, we've consulted young people. Is that really active for full consultation? I don't think it is. So it's because the process is just as important as the substance and as important as the outcome. The process is to begin to ask the question, what needs to be done? And ask everyone. 2, who needs to be here in this conversation? What issues should we discuss? What are mechanisms for making decisions? It's time consuming, I do agree. And many times as development actors or government are in a hurry to get to an end point because you need to move on. But the design of the process that is supposed to promote inclusion and no one left behind is just as important as what you get discussed and as important as the decisions you make ultimately. Otherwise, you will say we've consulted young people, but it's been a tokenist consultation. And for us as development actors, as the UN, in our desire for quick outcome, for quick results, to finish a process, we don't often go through this route. We go the quicker part of, we've discussed, we have ideas, we've agreed on what needs to be done, then we call a meeting. For young people, they say, okay, this is our ideas, do you agree? Well, there's power asymmetry in the first case. Are you expecting them to disagree? This is the resident coordinator of the UN saying, do you agree? And these are young people from, say, communities, deprived areas. They're like, how can we say no to the resident coordinator? Of course they will agree. And then we will say we've consulted the youth. So I battle with that every single time, and how And we need to keep challenging ourselves to try and do it properly. Because it's all about good process design. It's not rocket science. It's nothing new. It's about process. A good process design means that consultation should be meaningful. And what is meaningful consultation?
Your point reminds me of a joke that some people invite advisors, and when they arrive in the meeting, that person who invited them is the one advising them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. When we follow trends, regionally or globally, young people are for sure, a mass force for positive change. But if they're not well handled, they can also be a very big force for maybe some change which was not desired. What should be done to ensure that young people are really a positive force for change, for development, and sustainable peace?
You know, this is something similar that I see a lot in our UN documents, that young people could be a force for good, a force for bad. And so they talk about demographic dividends, might be positive or negative dividend. And I question those assumptions. Because the problem is not the youth and their numbers. I don't think that that's the problem. The problem is, one, the legitimacy of the process we offer, the credibility of us and the institutions that are mediating these discourses with the youth. The youth are not stupid. Many of them may not have gone to school, but they are quite sophisticated in their understanding of national dynamics. And third, there's a significant trust deficit in many of our societies today, particularly between young people and many institutions of the state. If there is a trust deficit, that's where the problem we talk about arises. So one then makes proposals and they reject the proposals outright, and they feel insulted, and then they might begin to mobilize to protest what is being proposed. It's not because they are there force for evil. It's because that the institutions of the state have not earned their trust. And what is being put on the table might be seen as something, actually designed to manipulate. So the starting point is, how do we as leaders of society build trust with our constituents, particularly with our young people? How do we demonstrate that we are listening, that we hear them, and that we will respond to their needs? A fascinating example for me is when President Kagame travels to the countryside and he has these meetings and consultations. And he comes back to Kigali. You see usually what happens. Because he takes the things that he's heard in those meetings and he begins to challenge all the officials of state. He said, but why is this happening? A young person said to me in that community, we don't have water, we don't have this. Why is that so? Because in the budget, it's been approved. Why has that construction not taken place? That's how you build legitimacy. That's how you build trust with the institutions. That's how you connect with the people. Because they then know that the promises you've made, you're making an effort to deliver them. But more important, that you are listening. And that their concerns are important to you. In many societies, many parts of Africa, it's not like that. I was once in a country where we had a meeting, and the president was coming to open the meeting, and they drove everybody out of the streets. So the president Muteke could pass. It's not that people were being asked to stop and wait. Nobody could be on the street. People were pushed inside houses, whether the houses belong to them or belong to anybody else. They were pushed inside houses so that an elected president can drive to the meeting to open that meeting. It's quite possible. I don't want to be simplistic about this. So it's quite possible there may have been security concerns, there may have been other things. But the optics, so if there were security issues, it makes sense for the security agencies to make sure there are no obstructions. But you can make sure there are no obstructions without pushing your people out of the streets. But you have to enter an enclosure, a closed wall or a building inside, not stand anywhere by the roadside. So that president can pass. The optics just justifies this point about legitimacy, credibility, and trust. When those are missing, and the young people start reacting, we turn around and say they are a negative force. The second point is that very often it's the role of us as leaders and actors in taking advantage of their limited financial situation, limited skills and education, and putting them out on the streets on our behalf. And the other one linked to that is when we mobilize them on the basis of our own ethnic identities, ethnic or other identities and affiliations. And they say, hey, don't you see that people from our side are being punished, are being killed, and you guys are here, you don't want to fight for us? How can we blame the youth? We should have to blame those who are manipulating them, who are spewing, genocide, hate, ethnic jingoism, and using that as a basis to mobilize people from their side to go and fight for them, knowing that it's the youth who fight. So that is not to say that the youth are not responsible for some things. Obviously they are. But I will not use a collective term of youth to now say that they could be a risk. They're actually more of a force for good. If you build the credibility, the legitimacy, the trust, they will be out on the street, defending that democracy, defending that institution, defending that leader. The experience in Africa is that many leaders don't have that. And so the youth are the ones who feel it the most. Then they're in the front line of challenging or opposition to that leader, and then we say they are a negative force. It's I don't belong in that school of thought. I describe them as such. No. Yeah.
And you don't belong either in this school of thought to say that this demographic dividend offers both an opportunity and a challenge, because some who say that they base their ideas on the fact that, for example, in Rwanda, more than 50% of Rwandans are below 20 years old. It means that there is a high dependency ratio, because there are few people who are working for more. How would you see that demographic dividend, which is sometimes called a double-edged opportunity and a challenge? How would you see it? And if it is indeed a problem, how should it be handled to better contribute to the sustainable development?
The demographic dividends or the population explosion certainly offers challenges. I'm not saying it doesn't offer challenges. What I don't accept is the fact that there's a negative connotation to it. I'm saying that there are more structural issues that lead to those manifestations of negativity. And if we focus on the manifestations by the youth and ignore the structural issues, we will not find the right solution. But the population dynamics do offer the challenge, because the rise in our population is not being matched by a rise in economic opportunities. It's not being matched by a rise in the growth of the economy, and so or jobs. So you look at number of high people leaving high school and getting jobs, number of young people coming out of universities and getting jobs. So then you have a mass of young people who don't have jobs. Some don't have skills. And then there's no hope. Many countries have approached it differently. In Africa, you run into a challenge, because when many countries try to do population control using reproductive rights approaches, but faith communities will challenge you and fight you. And many of us come from countries that are very strong faith-based countries, whether they are Islamic or Christian or other religions. And so from a public policy perspective of trying to work with, encourage families and societies to stagger the number of children they have, and to be sure that you have those that you can cater for, which makes sense from a public policy perspective, but given the religious foundations of our society is problematic. Also from the fact of the life of the woman, that you should not have children in rapidity. So you should stagger the children you have, so that the woman can also have a longer life. So they don't have those, many of these faith institutions will not include those considerations in their decision making. And then they will say, oh, children come from God, and why should we question God? And then we have a number of children, but we can't fend for them. So when the family cannot fend for the child, one or two kids might have to drop out of school so that only one can go to school. What do you do with those kids? So policymakers are just overwhelmed by this challenge, and the economy isn't rising. So that's not a problem that will be solved anytime soon. So we've got many countries that are doing, and we see that quite a lot, particularly in Rwanda. It's the expansion of technical and vocational education is very important, because first of all, the aptitude of the child is important. If the attitude of the child is skills-based, something that they can use their hands well. In many societies, you don't need to go to college to be as successful as you want. It's your skills. So if your skills allows you to be the best at tailor, or the best fashion designer, furniture maker, whatever, nothing wrong with that. It can still be a middle income lifestyle. So those policies that allow kids to identify early what the skills level is and what the interest is, to make sure that they have opportunities to channel those energies there and to learn a skill. It's important. The key is to learn a skill so that no child is just sitting at home, no skill, no knowledge, no education. Then there's a problem. For those that have the aptitude to go to college, liberal arts, science education, all well and good. Those have aptitude for different learning opportunities, but we have to ensure that we offer them learning opportunities. But let's not deceive ourselves. It's not instant coffee. These problems will not go away anytime soon. Investments in education take 10 to 15 years before you start seeing the initial results. So it's not as if we start offering training and 2 years down the line, all the young people who didn't go to college have skills, they have jobs, they're making money. It takes 10 to 15 years at the minimum for the initial results to begin to appear. The key is to start, and start early, to identify the problem, to have the right policy mixes and the financing, to work with the development partners, work with private sector. So many training institutions get attached to private sector institutions for internship. So they go there, they practice, and if they learn and they're satisfied with them, they absorb them. So there's going to be a mechanism where they go learn something, but they get absorbed. They go learn, they are not absorbed, they're back home in the families. It creates disorientation in the family. They have skills, but they say they don't have jobs. Parents who had invested in their children, hoping that the children can then fend for themselves, find that somebody's 20, 25, 30 years old and still dependent on the parents. It creates all kinds of dynamics in the family that are pretty unhelpful in terms of societal cohesion and societal progress.
When we talk about education, there's this, it's not I wouldn't call it an issue. Today there is Chat GPT 3, tomorrow 4, who knows, the day after tomorrow it will be 5. There is this need of lifelong learning. How is it going to benefit young people, and why should they take it seriously?
Well, lifelong learning is not just for young people, it's for everybody. Yeah, because society is dynamic, because we keep learning. You just mentioned the ChatGPT 3, and then you may have 4 or 5. So we have to be adaptable, that's the point. In many economies, particularly after the global economic crisis began in 2008, and many industries collapsed. Typical example, coal industry in many parts of Western Europe and North America, and even here in Africa. For someone who's been working in the coal industry for all of their lives, and they're in their 50s, but they have families, they have responsibilities. You can't say to them, your industry has collapsed, so go home. Go home to what? Which means that if you have a mechanism for them to learn a new skill, for them to translate the knowledge. So the new skill is not about going to dig coal. It's about inventory management. It's about movement, moving things, right? Bookkeeping, accounting, all those kinds of things that they're able to do that allows them to move into a new direction. Why not? And if it requires learning something very, very new, so be it. Because if they know about production processes, they can take the same skill with a little bit of adaptive training. They can use the knowledge of production processes and adapt it elsewhere. So we all have to continue learning because the world is evolving. So no knowledge is wasted. That's the most important thing. So whether you're reading new books, you're learning new skills, that's what it is for everybody, not just for young people. The opportunities for young people is that the lifelong learning allows them to become versatile. And it allows them then to be competitive in many markets. So that's something you encourage. And so you could be on a job, but you could be learning new things. And that's not particularly about going back to school and getting another degree. Yeah, so by learning a new skill, learning new things, new technology, new knowledge, new applications, is all part of learning. So let's not limit it to any demographic. Even older people also have to engage in new learning. You have many people, I have many relatives who worked in the public service in government. So they know how to sit in offices, write memos, review documents. They were senior civils and they did it very well. And then there's an official retirement age. I think that it was 60. Some have increased to 65. Somebody hits 60 and they say the person is retired. They are hale, they are hearty, they are smart, they are knowledgeable, and they sit at home. Like, come on. The knowledge you use in the ministry is still useful somewhere else. Do you want to set up a consultancy firm? But the mental frame is that I am retired from public service, therefore I don't need to work again. I depend on my pension. Well, the pension is not enough. And many of them have kids late in their lives. So by the time they are retiring, none of their kids has even gone to college. But you sit at home, you have kids that need to go to college, and then you say you are retired. And then so you create the dependency, then you're looking at, because as Africans, we rely on social capital, right? So family members, extended family members, so you have responsibilities shared across the extended family. But the gentleman is just sitting there, warming his seat every morning. And you're like, why can't you go do something else? Make the effort, try. And it doesn't have to be another desk job. A lot of people that I know, when they retired in public service, converted the cars they were using in public service into taxis. And started driving the taxis. So that's the point about adaptability, new skills. So it's lifelong learning. So we need to encourage that. The fact that you've retired from public service does not mean you are tired. It just means that a phase of your life, professional life, has ended. Please go and begin a new phase that will make you feel fulfilled and give you the resources and income you need to continue the same quality of life that you had when you're in the public service.
We just come to the end of our interview, but I want to ask you, is there any point we didn't discuss?
If there is, I'm sure we'll have opportunity to discuss them again. Since we are both here, there may be other issues, but I'm more than happy.
Ozonnia Ojielo, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you very much.